Hi guys, welcome to my channel, Tag Your It. And today the subject of the matter is going to be grief. Going through the grieving process when you don't have a strong support system. Well, let's get into it. I have been dealing with grief a few times in my life, but most recently when I lost my dear mother in January of 2022. And I'm still dealing with it. When people say time heals, no, it doesn't. I'm gonna be honest. I don't feel that time heals. I just think over time you get better coping mechanisms that help you deal with the grief and all the emotions and turmoil that comes along with that. So I will say I've had a very rough time. Unfortunately, I really don't have close family, and I do have family. Let's get that straight. My grandmother had 9 kids, I come from a big family on my mother's side. However, it's a very dysfunctional family. So with that being said, I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. However, I left Chicago in 2018 and moved to Dallas, Texas, and have not yet looked back. And I don't plan on it. If I'm being honest, I just think the life that God has led me to live and is leading me to live, because I'm still a work in progress, was to escape the dysfunction. Because, I feel like people, when you stay in dysfunction, you become it. And sometimes I used to have a spirit to try to, I'm going to help this person. I'm going to tell them what I did and how to do this. But you really can't do that, because when people are truly dysfunctional and comfortable in their dysfunction, they're not going to make any changes unless they have to want it more than you want it for them. So with that being said, I'm not really connected with any of my family on my mother's side. I mean, my mother has siblings, and when she first died and was actively dying in the hospital, everybody, my phone was blowing up. Everybody's calling me, texting me, and then it happens. She passes, and funeral arrangements are made, the burial takes place, and I go back to Texas, and I can count the people on one hand in my immediate family that actually checked on me. And that was a very sobering experience, if I'm being honest, because I feel like people, when you're grief stricken, it's not just getting through the funeral and the burial. That's the easy part, and for me, it's only me and my brother. My mom had 2 kids, which was me and my brother. And we have different dads, and we're totally different people, if I'm being honest. But nevertheless, that's my brother, and I love him. However, he's the oldest, but, the dynamic of our relationship, everything has always been on me to do. So, during the funeral process and the burial process, it was me doing everything, planning everything, make sure everything was, good to go. So that was distracting in a good way. But again, grief does not leave. It still has to be processed. It still has to be dealt with. I also had a 10-year-old daughter at the time. So, I still had school and daily activities for her, in addition to me being a full-time realtor, having to see clients. So life had to go on for me. I'm a single mom. Like, I don't have a husband or anybody to make the wheels turn but me. And that was extremely hard. I'm not going to lie. When I think about those times, I just thank God for the strength that he got me through it. I would say the first 90 days, I was pretty much on autopilot. It was surreal. I hadn't really fully even started processing it. But, the reason of this video is to just let people know that it's very important to support people during their grieving process. Don't just be around and give your love and support when the person is dying or it's funeral services. I mean, I feel like the biggest support comes from the people around you, and when you most need it, it would be after all that is over with, and you're getting back to real life and having to adjust to life without that person. And my person was my mother. Me and my mother were literally best friends. I mean, the first call of the morning, the last call in the evening, we were very, very closely bonded, and with my daughter as well. And it's just, it's a different dynamic when you lose your mom. And I can honestly say, prior to losing my mom, I didn't understand. Like, I had people and associates and friends, and their mom died, and, I gave my condolences, but I didn't understand the gravity of losing a mother. And for anybody that still has a living mother, whether you all get along, if you can make things right, make it right, because you only have one mother. And, my mother was phenomenal woman, up and down. And, I miss her dearly. But just thinking about grief, you really find out who's really who. That's the main thing. Some people you've known for years, some family that's been in your life all your life, but yet, it's like they don't even think to like check on you, or, and I know sometimes grief can be awkward because people, I don't want to say the wrong thing, so I don't say anything. But sometimes not saying anything is the worst thing you can do, because then that makes a person just feel unseen, unheard, and unfortunately, my first holiday season was horrific, if I'm being honest. Like, I kept a smile on my face because, of course, I have a daughter. But, being alone, because typically I would go home back to Chicago, my mom for the holidays. It would be her house cooking and, cracking jokes and all that good stuff. And now I don't have that. So what did I do? Reach out to a couple of close family members, so I thought, and tried to see, what their plans was, and possibly could I come there, just not so I would not be alone. I don't have family in Texas. And, I have a dog. But unfortunately, I called 3 different people and nobody wanted to accommodate me, my daughter, and my dog. And the crazy thing, I get that not everybody does animals. I totally get that. But the crazy thing is, everybody I asked had a dog. Can you believe that? Every family member that I asked had owned a dog. So that was just like unbelievable. So after that, I just really had to take a close look and take a step back at my relationships with my family and friends, and grief can make you bitter. I'm not going to lie, because it took me about 6 to 9 months to get over the bitterness that I felt for people, like not supporting me, not, checking on me, even my own father, and our relationship really wasn't tight to begin with. But it was just very isolating. And to a certain extent, it still is. But, as each day goes by, I just thank God for giving me the grace and the fortitude to push on. Because at the end of the day, my mother she was a true lioness, the spirit of a lioness. She was the strongest woman I have ever known, even on her deathbed, So with that being said, even though she's no longer here in the physical, I have to take all that she has taught me, all the wisdom that she has passed along to me, and utilize it in a positive way. And I mean, like I said, you can get stuck in grief. You can. It's very easy. But when I find myself going through those periods where I'm, isolating myself and just sad all the time, you got to get out. You have to break the chains, because grief can cause depression. It can cause anxiety. It can cause you to go to some really, really dark places. But to anyone out there that is experiencing grief of, you know, a parent or any loved one for that matter, you know, my prayers are with you. Continue to hold on, and just hold on to that person's essence, because I do believe in a spirit. And even though their physical body is no longer here on this earthly plane, the spirit never dies. And I feel my mother all the time, and I thank God for that. But it just let me prioritize who was in my life. That's what it showed me, like who belonged in my life and who never belonged in my life, you know. Because anytime you can go through something that detrimental, like losing your mother, and have unsupportive people, and you know, and I'm not saying I'm not a really needy person, if I'm being honest, but just to be thought about or checked on, or even if you don't know what to say, just hello, I'm praying for you, you know, something, you know. And unfortunately I didn't get that. I had to deal with things, you know, the best way I could. The dynamic of me and my brother's relationship is not really a good dynamic either. So I had to kind of cut ties with him. And when I mean cut ties, I don't dislike or disown or hate anybody. But when you bring toxic energy, it's time for me to separate myself. So that's what I had to do. So unfortunately, like I said, when you go through a situation like that, you really find out who's who has always been there and who never was. So, you know, to anybody out there going through grief, I'm praying for you. And just take one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 minute at a time. And don't let anybody give you a timeline of grief. You know, because some people want you. I had a friend tell me, oh, well, I just don't want you to go through what I went through when I lost my grandmother. But you know, losing a grandmother and losing your mom is two totally different things. And you will never understand unless you have lost a mother. So therefore, to be quite honest, those are the people that I confide in. The, you know, people that have that same experience as me, because they typically are better to understand what you're going through. But if you are someone, a family or friend, and somebody has lost somebody, just be there for them. You know, I'm not saying you have to call every day or, you know, drop by every day, but just check on them. You know, just let them know that they're not in this on their own, you know, because grief can be a very lonely place, if I'm being honest. But, you know, with the correct coping skills, you know, with the faith of God, I am getting through this. My mother has been gone 3 years. Some days are better than others, you know, but I will admit, like, you know, she helped me tremendously with my daughter. And it's just hard. I'm not going to sit here and tell a lie. It's hard having to mother, but having no mother, you know, somebody that you would call to get valuable advice from or bounce an idea, you know. I don't have that anymore. So I'm navigating this thing on my own. But by the grace of God, I will continue to navigate it and get through it. But again, don't let anybody put a timeline on your grief. If they're not supportive, cut them off. Period. If they're bringing you toxic energy and not being supportive and comforting of what you're dealing with, cut them off, you know, and not in a bitter way. You don't have to be hateful or bitter to cut somebody off. You can do it lovingly. I release you with love. And that's all I got, folks. Remember, live life on purpose, with purpose, and tag your it. You have the tenacity, audacity, and grit to do anything you want to do in this thing called life.